pulling. Give me some of your tots.
No, go find your own.
Come on, give me some of your tots.
No, I'm freaking starved. I didn't get to eat anything today. Oh, God. Gross. Freaking
Man, that guy was unpopular. Welcome to Flynndogg Woodwork. So today, I'm going to say something that might be a little unpopular, and that's that you can have too many clamps. Well, let me rephrase that. You can have too many of the wrong types of clamps. Let's take a look at my clamps and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So when you first start woodworking, you may visit your local big box store and you see all the different types of clamps. And there's so many different types of clamps and you may have no idea how each clamp is used. Oh, I got a cramp right now. First of all, I didn't know you were back. Secondly, we're talking about clamps, not cramps. So let's start talking about some of the clamps I've purchased over the years and which ones I think the beginning woodworker should get. So if we take a look at my assembly table, you can see a lot of the clamps that I've purchased over the years. And a lot of these I really had to dig up just because I don't use them that often. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because clamps are expensive. Which ones are we going to use and which ones are just going to collect dust in our shop? And we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get started with our first clamp. So the first clamp that we're going to talk about today is actually a vise. Now this is one of the first tools that I ever bought in woodworking because it's something I thought I needed on a regular basis. So this is the first vise that I ever purchased, and this is actually a metalworker's vise. Now this is something that I use occasionally. Now I can probably count on the number of one hand how many times I use this vise in a year. And that's something important to point out, because when you first start woodworking, you don't want to be spending a whole lot of money on something you're not going to be using on a daily basis. Really, the only time I use this vise is when I'm shaping some metal or stabilizing a workpiece as I drill a hole. And one thing that impressed me with this vise was simply its price. When I purchased that vise, it was less than $40. So for this item, I would recommend that you hold off on purchasing this item until you know you need it. We're actually going to be looking at some other clamps in this video that can do almost the same thing. The next item that we're going to take a look at is one that I purchased within the last year and a half, and this is the Soberg Smart Vise. Let me show you what I intended on using this for. So the Soberg Smart Vise is a great item if you want to get into hand tools but you don't want to spend a whole lot of money. This thing is great for jointing boards as well as planing them. But if you don't have a desire to get into hand tools right off the bat, I would hold off on purchasing a vise like this. This is sort of a luxury even for the intermediate woodworker. Now there's some other vices you can purchase like this clamp-on vise, but this is really a luxury versus a necessity. Now in today's video, you may be noticing that we're going to be going through these clamps rather fast, and that's because we have a ton of clamps to cover, so hopefully you can keep up. So the next clamp that I want to talk about is the C-clamp. I got a C once, best grade I ever got. That checks out, I believe you. So in my shop, I could only find these two C-clamps, and there's a reason for that. In fact, one of these C-clamps I actually inherited from my dad, and the other C-clamp I actually purchased to hold down something in my truck. Now even though these were the pinnacle of what I thought a clamp was when I first started woodworking, they really are quite limited in their function. And that's because since the clamp is one solid piece, you really only have the capacity of the jaw. Therefore, I really only use a clamp like this in combination with a wood caul or when I'm trying to glue up a panel and I want to squeeze two seams together. So once again, hold off on purchasing C-clamps if you're just starting out, as there's a lot more versatile clamps we're going to be taking a look at in a moment. So now that we've covered a couple of clamps that I don't necessarily recommend for the beginning woodworker, now let's talk about a clamp that I highly recommend. So these are quick clamps. Now these are some of the most widely available clamps you can purchase. And as you can see, I'm kind of partial to Bessie, but there's a couple of things about these clamps that you need to take a look at when you're first purchasing your first quick clamp. So in my opinion, there's two main features that I like to take a look at when I'm purchasing a quick clamp. Let's take a closer look at these two features. So the first thing that I like to take a look at when I'm purchasing quick clamps is the width of the jaw. Now both of these clamps are Bessie 12-inch clamps, however they have different sized jaws. If we take a look at the first clamp, you can see that we have about a 1 3/4 inch jaw. If we take a look at the second clamp, we're almost at 3 inches. And what I look for is the widest jaw I can find, as this will give my workpiece just that extra support and it will evenly distribute all that pressure across your workpiece. The next thing that I like to take a look at is the length of the clamp. Now in my opinion, the longer the clamp, the better. You need to go big or go home. Mom said I didn't need to go home until next week. Perfect. Let's take a look at some of my quick clamps and I'll show you what I use each one for. So it really is quite amazing at how many different sizes of quick clamps you can purchase. This is my smallest quick clamp at 4 inches, and this is my largest quick clamp at 36 inches. Now small quick clamps aren't useless, however they are limited in their capacity. What they can be used for are things like holding down a stop block or holding down a thin piece of material to your assembly table. But it's the larger clamps that really give you the capacity you need when you're doing things like panel glue ups or if you're working with thicker stock. Now one thing that will come into play is your budget, as the longer the clamp is, the more expensive it tends to be. So the only reason I said go big or go home is because I do a lot of panel glue ups. If you're going to be creating a lot of tabletops, you're going to want to go with a larger clamp. However, there is a sweet spot, and that's a 12-inch quick clamp. So this is what I recommend for the beginning woodworker. Another nice feature that I was unaware of when I first started purchasing these quick clamps is they can actually be used as a spreader. Simply by rearranging the jaws, you can change this into a spreader and separate 2 pieces of material. Spreader? I barely know her! Oh, dear Lord. Before we move on from quick clamps, I did want to show you one last quick clamp that I featured in a previous video, and that's the Jorgensen Easy Hold. Now this clamp has got a unique design that has little dovetails on the end. This allows you to slide them together and extend your clamping capacity. And it's this simple design that easily allows you to extend the reach of your clamp simply by placing the 2 dovetails together and clamping it down. Well, that's enough about quick clamps. As a reminder, I'm going to leave links to all these clamps in the description below so you can go check them out for yourself. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment, as it really does help out this small woodworking channel. So this next clamp is a clamp that you can typically find in a dollar bin inside of your big box store. And there's a reason why it's just $1. And that's because this clamp really doesn't have a whole lot of functionality in a woodworker's shop. In fact, in my shop, I've really only used this clamp in one capacity. And these are the clamps I'm talking about. These are called spring clamps. And that's because there's a little spring right in the center of them that allows you to give a little bit of clamping pressure when you squeeze the knobs. Now these clamps really only have one function in my shop. Let me show you what I use it for. For me, I really only use these clamps for stop block clamps. Now if you have some other uses for these clamps, I'd love to hear about them, as I really don't get any use for these clamps in my shop. Now the next clamp we're going to talk about is one that you may see in the Craig area of your local big box store. Now these 2 clamps are called locking clamps, and they're both made by Craig, and they serve 2 different purposes. Let me show you the purposes of these clamps. The first locking clamp that I'm going to show you is the one with the 2 flat jaws. And since this is made by Craig, I really only use it when I'm locking down my Craig pocket hole jig. So not only do I only use this clamp for one purpose in my shop, it can really be quite a pain in the butt to use. To adjust the clamp, you need to twist this knob, clamp it down, test it, adjust again until you find the right clamping pressure. Also, these handles fall off all the time and I simply lose them around my shop. Now let's look at the second locking clamp that I have that truly only has one purpose in my shop. When I need it, it's great, but I don't need it that often. And this clamp is used when you're using pocket hole joinery, when you're trying to get 2 pieces of wood together as you're screwing in your screws. You place one end of the clamp into the pocket hole and you tighten it down, and this secures the 2 pieces of wood together. So if you're a beginning woodworker, in my opinion, you should try to avoid these locking clamps, as they have very limited use in your shop. They're also a real pain to work with. Now let's move on to our next clamp, which is a clamp that I'm almost exclusively purchasing for my shop going forward. So this is the clamp that I'm moving towards, and this, for obvious reasons, is called the F clamp. Let's take a closer look at this clamp. I got a lot of F's in school. I'm quite well aware of that. So the F clamp really is a C clamp on steroids. In fact, if you were to cut the bar right here, this would essentially be a C clamp. Now the nice thing about an F clamp is, since you do have this bar, you can really adjust the capacity of this clamp. Now the reason that I said that I'm moving towards F clamps going forward is because of the clamping pressure. Now this thing has got a ton more clamping pressure than your quick clamp, and that's why I'm moving towards this clamp. Now the adjustability of the F-clamp is a little bit more clanky than the quick clamp. However, with its solid steel core, it provides a lot more support than the aluminum core of the quick clamp. Not only that, but the F-clamp can really provide a lot of pressure simply by cinching it down by twisting the screw handle. Now once again, your budget's going to come into play here, as the F-style clamp is a little bit more pricey than the quick clamp. But if you're able to afford it, I highly recommend the F-clamp for the beginning woodworker. Now let's move on to our next clamp, which is a traditional clamp. However, I don't think it's the right clamp for a beginning woodworker. So this clamp has been around for a long time, and there's a reason for that. That's because this thing is very well made, and it can be used for a variety of different uses. This is the wooden screw clamp. Go ahead. Screw! So the screw clamp can be used in a variety of different ways. There's a couple uses of this clamp that I use all the time. Let me show you what those are. So one of the most common uses for this clamp, at least in my shop, are over at the drill press. In fact, I actually store this clamp at the drill press. If you place your workpiece into this clamp, you can easily drill into that workpiece and have it stabilized with that clamp. In the same fashion, because of its extensive reach, you can reach items that are far away from the edge of things like your drill press table and clamp them tightly down. Another use that I use this clamp for all the time is to use it as a footer. When I'm doing things like raising plywood in a vertical fashion, this makes a great footer to stabilize that plywood. Now the only reason that I don't recommend this clamp for the beginning woodworker is that it can oftentimes be very difficult to get even clamping pressure across the entire width of your clamp. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So because the two handles on the clamp move independently of each other, it can be very difficult to make sure that the two jaws of your clamp are perfectly parallel. If these jaws aren't completely parallel, you can end up with all your pressure on one point inside that clamp, therefore leaving gaps where there's no pressure applied. Now for some projects, this may be exactly what you're looking for, only providing pressure to a certain area of your workpiece. However, since those two knobs move independently of each other, I don't recommend this clamp for the beginning woodworker. Okay, so let's move on to our next clamp. And this is actually going to be a bunch of different types of clamps, as we're going to explore the different options we have for clamping down our corners. Let's go take a look at some corner clamps. So what do I mean by corner clamp? Essentially, I mean anything that you're going to be using to help you glue up your boxes and make sure that your corners are perfectly square. So over the years, I've collected a ton of different types of corner clamps to assist me in my glue ups to make sure that my corners are perfectly square. There's interior clamps, there's things like this wet hole setup clamp, there's the L-shaped clamp, and there's even clamps that rest on the very edge. Now if I were to pick one of these clamps that I think does the best job of providing the most clamping support and squaring up those corners, it would be this wet hole's corner clamp. And this is an inside corner clamp. However, this is all about the best clamp for the beginning woodworker. Let me show you what I think is the best clamp for the beginning woodworker. So by far, in my opinion, the best corner clamp for the beginning woodworker are these simple L clamps. And that's because they're very easy to use. All you do is you attach these knobs to the side of your workpiece and tighten them down by screwing the knob. The other nice thing about these clamps is they're super cheap. You can probably get 4 of these for the price of one of these inside corner clamps. And because most boxes I've seen have 4 corners, you're going to need at least 4 of these clamps. And since these clamps are super cheap, you can get as many of these clamps you need to do all your glue ups and make sure your boxes are perfectly square. I got a heart-shaped box from my cousin once. I'm pretty sure that was from your mom. Anyway, since we're talking about gluing up boxes, let's move on to our next clamp. Now, although I've griped about the next clamp I'm going to show you on a number of videos, these clamps do serve a purpose. However, in my shop, they do more frustrating than they do good. Let me show you which clamp I'm talking about. So this is the infamous band clamp. And this thing can be great for gluing up things like miters or frames. However, for gluing up boxes, this thing can be a real pain in the butt. The problem is it's very difficult to get each one of these corners on the corner of your box. Let me show you. All right, so that literally took me about 3 minutes to get that one strap on. Bert, you want to go ahead? And that's really the problem with this clamp. Those little corners on the clamp consistently fall off the corners of your box, and it's really hard to get everything aligned. So if you're going to get a corner clamp, stick with those L clamps and ditch the strap clamp. So now that we've talked a little bit about how we're going to clamp up the corners of our projects, now let's talk about how we're going to glue up panels that are just a little bit wider. So in order to glue up things like tabletops, you may need a clamp that goes beyond what our 36-inch quick clamp can provide, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Now the first clamp that I want to talk about is the parallel clamp. Now if you go on YouTube, you'll see every single YouTuber and their mother is using these clamps. However, for the beginning woodworker, this clamp just isn't necessary. And that's because this one clamp is $70. Now a beginning woodworker could go someplace like Harbor Freight and probably get 12 clamps with the same capacity as this clamp for the price of one Bessie parallel clamp. Now I'm not saying the parallel clamp is a bad clamp. In fact, I love the parallel clamp. However, for the beginning woodworker, the price of that clamp just isn't worth it. Now another option for gluing up large panels is using something like this bar clamp. Now I just purchased this bar clamp from Harbor Freight and I've been quite pleased with it. Now Rockler makes a version of this that's just a little bit more expensive, and it's called the Surefoot bar clamp. Now this clamp works in the same fashion that an F-style clamp works by tightening one side and then screwing it down with the screw knob. Now although I really like these bar clamps, I still don't think they're what the beginning woodworker should buy. Let me show you what they should buy. You sure been talking about bars a lot lately. We going out for drinks later? With you? Absolutely not. So the next clamp that we're going to be talking about is the pipe clamp. Not only are these inexpensive, but they probably have some of the strongest clamping pressure of any clamp that you can have in your shop. Let's take a closer look at them. So there are two main pipe clamps that you're going to see at most hardware stores. There's the Bessie pipe clamp and the Jorgensen pipe clamp. Now I have both of these and I have a strong opinion towards one. Now the Bessie pipe clamp is really a strong pipe clamp and I have no complaints with it. However, the Jorgensen pipe clamp, in my opinion, is just not worth it. And the reason I have this opinion about the Jorgensen clamp is because of the footings of this clamp. Because this thing sits too low to the ground, you can't even twist this clamp with the footings in place. However, with the Bessie, it's tall enough where you can easily adjust your clamp and screw it tighter and looser. So these pipe clamps typically come in two sizes, 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch. Now I typically like to go with the 3/4 inch pipe, however, a 1/2 inch pipe will do the job. So there's a couple advantages of having a pipe clamp. First off, they're not that expensive. You get all the hardware you need to make one pipe clamp for just about $15. Then all you need to do is to purchase the pipe. This means you can get any size pipe to create the exact size you need. This could be a 6-inch clamp, or it could be a 20-foot clamp. You can also attach these pipes together with couplings and make this thing really long. Not only that, but pipe clamps are super strong. They provide over 4 times the clamping pressure of a parallel clamp. A parallel clamp provides about 350 pounds of clamping pressure, while the pipe clamp can provide as much as 1,300 pounds of clamping pressure. So for the beginning woodworker, this is a no-brainer. Start your pipe collection early, as these will be some clamps you're going to use for your entire woodworking career. So those are some of the clamps that many woodworkers have a hard time deciding on which clamp is best for them. However, there are some specialty clamps that I found around my shop that I did want you to take a look at. Let's go take a look at them right now. So these clamps are really just variations of the F-style clamp. However, they have some functionality that you may not know about. So let's take a closer look. So I basically have 2 types of these clamps. I've got the Festool variety as well as the Match Fit Micro Jig variety. And these serve 2 different purposes. Now the main reason that I purchased these clamps was to use in conjunction with my MFT table. Now the way these are intended to work is to place into one of your MFT holes and then place your workpiece underneath. Then you can simply place your clamp in place and clamp it down. You can also use the match fit clamps in the same way by placing it in the hole and simply locking it down by screwing the knob. Now if you're in the market for one of these types of clamps, I would highly recommend one with a screw knob, as the ones with the ratcheting knobs tend to slip on you and they're very hard to secure down. Now there's quite a bit of other uses for these clamps as well. Let's take a look at a couple of those features. Now for the Festool clamp, one of the main reasons I got it was to attach my track from my track saw to my assembly table. By sliding it into the track saw, you can simply lock it down and make sure your track saw is secure. Now for the micro jig clamp, it's used in combination with the match fit system, which has to do with this dovetail. You can create things like jigs, such as this tapering jig for your table saw. And it easily allows you to clamp down your workpiece. Now neither one of these clamps are clamps that I think a beginning woodworker needs. However, if you haven't seen them, I thought they might be interesting to show you. Now let's take a look at another specialized clamp that's made by Rockler that I think also might be a valuable addition to the seasoned woodworker, however isn't necessary for a beginning woodworker. Now this clamp is called a bandy clamp. Now this clamp is essentially a spring clamp with a little rubber band, and this thing is something that you're not going to be using every day. However, when you need it, this thing can be a real big help. Let me show you how it's used. So this little clamp really is a one-trick pony. It's great for doing things like edge banding. Once you have your edge banding in place, you simply put your clamp around that edge banding, and that rubber band provides the support to your edge banding while still attached to your surface. So is this a clamp for the beginning woodworker? Absolutely not. However, it's just another unique clamp that I had in my shop that I wanted to show you. So I've got one more specialty clamp that I'd like to show you. This is a fence clamp made by Mousecraft. Let me show you how this is used. So the main purpose of this clamp is creating things like sacrificial fences. And this is done by cutting out a piece of MDF that's as tall as your fence and then drilling a few holes in the very top of it. Then you can place your clamp into those holes and tighten it down to your fence. Once this is done, you can maneuver your fence very close to your table saw blade without having to worry about whether or not your blade is going to scar up your fence. So is this a clamp that a beginning woodworker needs? Absolutely not. However, it is a specialty clamp that has a unique use that I thought I'd share with you. Well, that's a lot of clamps. We've been talking about clamps this entire video. Let's go over to the assembly table and we'll break it down to just 4 clamps that the beginning woodworker needs. Let's go take a look. So believe it or not, if you're just starting out in woodworking, there's really only 4 types of clamps that I think you should be taking a look at. The first clamp is the quick clamp. And if you're looking for a size, I would go for the 12-inch size or larger. The next clamp is the F-style clamp. And in the same fashion, I would go for the 12 inches or larger. The next clamp is for your corner clamps. And I would go with these L-shaped clamps as these are cheap and you can purchase a lot of them to make sure that you have all your glue up square. The last clamp, and probably one of the most powerful clamps, is the pipe clamp. And these are completely customizable and you can make your clamps as long or as short as you want. So that's going to do us for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed going through all these different types of clamps, as I know I enjoyed showing them to you. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, as it truly does help out this small woodworking channel. Until next time, take care as always. Oh, and my channel is Bert. It's a better channel. Make sure you subscribe.